Recording is back in progress. And now we're back. Only because I lose the controls.
Yeah, I get it.
So we're right at the bottom of the hour. We'll give it 1 minute and then we'll start up. And we will share the recording back. So you have that to share with everybody.
Wonderful, thank you. I know our program is a mix. Some staff don't start until 8, but school staff are here at 7:30, so a recording would be wonderful if people aren't able to catch it right now.
Yeah. All right, so why don't you start us up and we'll take it from there.
Great. Well, I just wanted to say a quick welcome. Thank you so much to the staff who are joining us this morning. And Craig and Tom, thank you so much for giving your time and expertise around financial matters, budgeting specifically this morning. We really, really appreciate all of the wisdom and advice that you're planning to share with us. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say to start us off.
No, and we appreciate that. Yeah, so we're going to jump right into this because we know there's not a lot of time and we want to go fairly quickly, but we are going to start here with the image on the screen. For those of you who are too young to know the joys of reading Mad Magazine, Craig and I in a much misspent youth, that's SPY versus SPY. And we use this image every time we talk about saving versus spending because this is a tug that goes on in each and every one of us every single day because we want to be saving, but at the same time, we want to be spending, we want to be living, and we have this whole back and forth of should I spend, should I save, should I spend, should I save? And it really does cause this sort of conflict in each and every single one of us. So we use this image because we like that, but also, let's face it, as Heather said, we're talking about budgeting here and cash flow, and it's an early Monday morning. Nobody's going to have fun with this. We're not waking up going, gee, I want to talk about budgeting today. So we try to have a little fun with it. So just understand that's the idea behind this. Real quick, the agenda this morning, we're going to talk about having a relationship with your money, understanding spending versus saving, money habits, ways to make changes to be better at saving. And then we're always here to answer any questions. Just real quick with some housekeeping before we start up. As we said, we are going to be recording. It is recording right now. So we just ask, keep your microphones muted. If you do have questions, drop them into the chat box. We'll try to answer them as we go along. I know we're on a tight time limit here, so we'll stay on as long as we can to try to answer those. But otherwise, if we can't get to them in the time we got to close this down, we will follow up and reach out to anybody. Just real quick for us, my name is Tom Alessi. I'm the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services now in my 25th year. I'm an investment advisor. I'm also a certified fiduciary. That means I'm always acting in the best interest of my clients whenever I'm giving any guidance or advice. I want to bring Craig. Can you introduce yourself, my vice president?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Aries Foundation, and I've been in financial services a little over 20 years now. And I specialize in working with individuals and families to help them define their financial goals and have a better relationship with their money.
And Greg will be chiming in as we go along. He's also going to be manning the chat box. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in there. Not sure Melanie, the other member of our team, might be on as well. She'll also try to help out as we go along here. Real quick on the Aries Foundation. So Craig and I, like I said, we've been in financial services for a long time, over 45 years now between the two of us. But what we did is we launched this nonprofit, the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. You can find it on the web at ariesfoundation.org. The mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money, because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like every other personal relationship that you have in your life, there are triggers and behaviors that can cause us to act, well, a little irrationally sometimes when we deal with our finances. And that's really where we sort of segue into the start of this when we're talking about cash flow and dealing with money. The first thing is this relationship, just like every other relationship, you need to be truthful, and you need to be truthful with the relationship that you're having with your money. For a lot of us, Craig, there's that like, oh, I'm not good with money, or I don't want to deal with money thing. And so we sort of try to push it off, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it.
Well, I think that's, anything that's unpleasant, we kind of do the same thing. I think the issue is trying to make it so it's not so unpleasant to deal with. Because regardless of whether you want to deal with it or not, money is going to influence your life. So
You have to deal with it. And so that's sort of the first thing, is coming to this reckoning, if you will, that says like, okay, I'm gonna have to, at some point, if I feel like I'm bad at it, or I don't like it, or it's math, I don't want to deal with it. Everybody's got to deal with it. So it's coming to that, like, okay, I've got to have this reckoning, and I've got to understand that. The other thing is, we tend to spend when we see things and do things. And I think, for Craig and I, we always talk about social media adding to this. This is sort of that, like, I'm living a lifestyle that maybe I'm living well above my means. I think in the day it used to be called, trying to keep up with the Joneses. You see your neighbors on social media taking trips or buying stuff, and you're like, well, I can do that. Why am I not doing that? Right, Craig?
Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, it's a little bit more prominent than it used to be, because you go on your Facebook or your TikTok or whatever, and you see your friends doing, these exact trips, but you don't know the story behind that, but you just know, well, maybe I should be doing this stuff. Why are we vacationing? Why am I buying a new home? Why am I driving a new car? And you start comparing, what you're doing and how you're managing your finances based on what you're seeing in the media. So it's just, just like we used to walk outside, but we don't do that anymore and talk to our neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah, now we can just look, and that's the other thing, right? So, this whole, and certainly the pandemic, amped this up. What Craig and I refer to as impulse buying, buying everything on plastic, buying everything with the push of a button, Amazon, it shows up on your doorstep, the same day, the next day. I mean, you see all the ads now with DoorDash and all the stuff, like, hey, you can get it this afternoon, just push a button and it'll be there. Well, there's this disconnect that occurs between, hey, I'm pushing a button, or I'm just using this piece of plastic, and that's actually my money going out the door. And there's nothing wrong. We understand it's a plastic world, right? We understand you have to have it and you got to deal with it. But, part of this is sort of trying to do a check and balance to what I'm spending, how I'm spending, when I'm spending. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit with some of the ways to deal with that. But this whole idea of, hey, I can just, push a button and it shows up, like, Craig, that just gets us a little, really disconnected from everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, that's intentional, right? So realtors know that the easier it is to separate you from your money, the better. So yeah, one click, boom, it's on your doorstep, instant gratification, and you didn't miss anything, right?
Right. So I know Heather used the word before, and we talked about it a little bit. We talked about being better with your money, but we really do try to avoid that B word, that budget, right? See, because what happens is a lot of times, and I don't care what you Google, I don't care what you look up. You can look up financial independence, financial planning, financial wellness, be better with money, whatever. Everything tells you within the top 2 or 3 things, get a budget. And the problem for most people is when I say get a budget, they immediately start to, recoil, right? They back off. They're like, well, wait, I don't want to do that, right, Craig? I don't want to have to put this stuff down. What am I talking? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, the B word should be 4 letters because it's really scary and almost like, right? And what it does is it does make people recoil. Like, I don't want to math. A budget is restricting. Automatically, I got to punish myself because I'm sure I did something wrong, right?
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? That whole like I mean, that's what we get for feedback from people. It's like it almost feels like Craig said, he used the word restrictive. Like, it's a very, very good word for that. Like, anytime you say to somebody, no, put a budget together, and they're like, oh God, I don't want to do that. Like, that's homework. Like, I don't have to go through that. And so we try not to use the word. We talk about cash flow, we talk about spending, we talk about saving. And really the adage is, because honestly, you can't save until you know what you are spending. And that's the reason for it. That's why we talk to everybody about, you got to put this cash flow together. You've got to understand what you're spending. Because until you know what you're spending, whether it's on a weekly, monthly, annual basis, it's very, very difficult to have a savings goal or save towards a goal without knowing that. And honestly, the catch-22 is the same, right? you really shouldn't be spending until you know what you want to be saving. And we'll talk about goals and talk about goal setting in a little bit, but this is, and go back to that spy versus spy, that whole tug that goes back and forth, right? Like Greg, I know I should be saving for whatever that thing you're saving for, but at the same time, I want to be living today.
Well, I mean, it's more fun to spend money today. Savings not
But
always.
savings, yes. Yeah, savings is not a fun thing. We talked about it. It's Monday morning, like savings is not fun, right? That's the whole thing. Spending money is fun. But one of the things that we are always going to say to everybody, we are never going to tell you how to spend your money. The adage is that we want you to be aware of where you are spending your money and why. Because that really becomes the most important thing for all of us, is to be looking at, why am I spending my money? And again, we'll talk about some of the steps and, action tips that people can take to try to, back off some of that. But you do have to that's part of that honest relationship with your money. Why am I spending it? Why did I do it? Am I trying to just get the endorphin rush? Is that what I wanted? I wasn't feeling good. I bought something. I got a momentary, oh, I feel better now type of thing.
Yeah,
This is what, go ahead, Greg.
And everybody faces these challenges too, whether you're, a couple old guys like Tom and I, trying to deal with your money, or you're brand new to actually getting a steady paycheck, trying to figure this stuff out. Everybody's trying to do that balancing act of what can I spend and what should I be saving. So it is a push-pull, and it's something everybody's trying to get a handle on.
Right. And so, like I said, we talk about this from cash flow, right? So cash flow, this is money coming in. Now, this is a very good time to be talking about this, because this is the beginning of the year. So you have all of last year. So if 2023, you can go back in and look, this is what I made last year. Whatever that number is, through everything that you had, whether that was just your earnings from paycheck, whether it was dividends, whether it was rent, whatever the combination is, this is what I made in 2023. I can divide that by 12. I know what I have coming in. That's sort of the easy thing.
Yeah, and this
Then
time
we
it's a little easy. I would say this time of year it's actually a little easier because you're gonna be doing your taxes soon. So you're all getting
good point, right? Good point, Dave. We're all going to be getting our tax stuff together.
Yeah.
Another thing we have to deal with, but taxes. But so, you're putting it together, so you've got that number. You know what it is, whatever the total year was, divided by 12. I've got my monthly number. This is what I've got coming in the door every month. The hard part is trying to figure out what was going out the door on a monthly basis. And when we say fixed expenses, we mean those things that have to be spent, i.e. the rent of the mortgage, utilities, food in the home, insurances to cover the car or the home, that type of thing. That's a fixed expense. That's a must pay. That's got to be paid. It's those discretionary, that line item number 2 there, Craig, that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is it's hard for a lot of us to determine which is really fixed and which is really discretionary, right?
Yeah, okay, I get it, right, in terms of that, but so just breaking it down, just understand, we'll go a little bit more detail in the next slide with it in terms of going through that. But the bottom line is, I know what I've got coming in. I've sort of figured out what I got going out, and at the end of the month, I either have a surplus, means I have money left over,
Yep.
or I've got too much month at the end of my money, and which means I'm living beyond my means. I've got a deficit. And this is where the conversation really turns into, okay, now we have to sort of figure out what we're spending on and why we're spending. And that's, again, we're never going to tell you how to spend your money. We just want you to be aware of how you're spending your money. And, understand that anytime you're going through this, as we talked about, it's not easy. It's an ongoing process. So it's something that you've got to spend time with and dealing with and come back to, Craig, right, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an event, it's a process. I mean, it's similar to, if you start exercising, well, you can go to the gym one time, you're not set for the rest of your life, right? It should be a budget
Right.
one, I think you're going to be all set. So something you got to do on a regular basis if you want it to be productive.
So we talked about knowing your cash flow, right? right? The money that you have coming in, that's fine. Must pay expenses, again, that's the rent, the mortgage, utilities, the food in the home. And, some of that is static, rent, mortgage, that can be static, that can be the same every month. The rest of it can be variable, obviously. It's freezing here. So, our heat costs are much more than they are in July. But again, you've got a whole year to look at. You've got 2023, you know what all your costs were last year. Now you can just, on an averaging basis, divide it all by 12. This is what I spent on a monthly basis. Now I can get a handle on whether I've got some surplus or I've got a deficit in my cash flow. And here's one of the things for everybody that you need to be thinking about. Before we get to the fun stuff, before we get to I'm spending and I'm having fun and doing things, you really need to be thinking about paying yourself first, right, Greg? Like treating yourself like a bill type of thing.
Yeah, most people don't do this. Most of the clients I work with are very good at paying their bills because they know, well, that's got to be paid or something bad's going to happen. But what they do is they say, well, all that's got to come before me. And at the end of the day, their savings is basically whatever's left over. And a lot of times there's nothing left over. So
Right.
they're ending out not having a savings that they want to have, as opposed to making themselves a priority, like you just talked about as a bill.
So then you get discretionary spending, right? Now that's the fun stuff, right? That's everything else. But if you think about this, how we're spending, I'm going to spend those must pay. I've got to have my must pay bills. That's got to go first. I really should be allocating money to whatever I'm saving towards. And we'll talk about goal setting in a little bit. Then I can spend, then I can have fun, then I can do the discretionary stuff. And this way I'm sort of setting myself up where at least I'm taking care of myself at the same time, sort of the buffer between saving versus spending. And then the last one on there is taking action. See, a goal without a plan, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And if you don't put something in place, it's never going to happen. So it's all good and well to say, hey, I'd love to do this, I want to do this, but unless you take action and make it move forward, it's never going to happen. So changing your spending habits, look, one of the biggest things for people is that they try to treat money like it's math. And money is not math. Money has an emotional component to it. We've got stuff that we've dealt with, Greg, like whether it's from our parents, whether it's from things that we've done, all sorts of things that happen that tie us into money, that cause us to not have it go that straight line, 1 + 1 = 2 type of thing.
Yeah, we do another webinar. We talk about, money personalities and what kind of people we are, whether we're savers or spenders or, all those different types of personalities. And a lot of those things, like you said, are set in motion before we even start getting money, right? The way we watch our parents handle things and how our lifestyle starts off when we're younger. And so, yeah, it really is more about the emotional aspect than it is about the numbers. The numbers are the easy part. You get a calculator or you use a spreadsheet now and all these different, programs that allow you to do the math. The issue is, can you control your habits, the habits that you started? That's the tough.
Right. And that's where we're going to get into with it, right? So living within your means, like we're not saying anything here that's woo, new and thing, but the whole idea and one of them, number 3 on there, reducing transportation costs. Like one of the biggest things that we've been running into with folks is the rideshare programs. The Ubers and the Lyft programs, because that suddenly becomes this expenditure that's really not being tracked too well, Craig, in terms of, hey, I just I took an Uber, or I did this or I did that on it.
Well, I think that's what I was talking about earlier. What's a fixed expense and what's a discretionary? Sometimes we don't realize we're really paying for convenience versus a necessity. And that's, I think, where some of those Uber, Lyft, because it's just easy. I'm just going to call to pick me up right wherever I'm standing. Right. They just pick me up and bring me where I got to go, as opposed to trying to figure out public transportation or take a car and try to park or something along those lines. So like I said, sometimes you need to understand what's really the difference between something that's a fixed and needed expense versus something that's just a convenience.
Right. And so, again, it's January, but this is a very good time to be doing this because you can take a snapshot. You can take a look at everything you spent last year. Take all of the expenses, everything that you spent. You've got, like Craig said, we're putting stuff together for our taxes. We're getting the year-end statements from the bank and the credit cards and everything else. We got to figure out all that we spent. right? So then I can break it down, divide it by 12. This is what I spent. This is what went out the door on a monthly basis through 2023. Either I'm spending too much or, I've got to make changes and figure things out. And so decide, all right, I want to try to make a change and then do it again in April. Because then you'll have the first 3 months of this year of 2024 and do the same averaging and were you better? And, anytime we're trying to get there, there are steps that we can take, and we'll go through that in a second. But it's really about that idea of looking at what am I spending? And can I make changes so that I can achieve whatever goal it is I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, but I gotta stop you here, Tom, because I'm like, la, 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 la. I don't want to know what I spent. I don't
Well, I
want
understand that, believe me, this is my having to admit to my wife how much I golfed last year. That's a different conversation. That's something everybody's got to deal with. But yes, you've got to figure that out because it's the only way you're going to be able to put something in place, put something on track. And we'll talk about it in the next slide or two about ways to sort of deal with that or cut back on it.
right.
And so, we talk about this cash only thing on the top there, right? The first one, the cash only. You don't mean going to cash only. We mean trying to take 1 day or 2 days a month where you're just going to say, okay, I'm only going to spend the cash I have on hand. I'm not going to reach for plastic today. I'm going to make today a cash only day. See, there is something very, very tactile about using cash, about actually having to separate us from our money that plastic, as we talked about, doesn't do. Now, here's the thing with a cash only day. You can't cheat the day before. Can't go to the ATM and withdraw $300 and go, oh, look, I got $300 in my pocket. It's waking up and saying, you know what, I'm just going to spend whatever is in my pocket today.
Well, somebody on our last webinar told me, this is great because I love the tactile part where you just said plastic kind of separates you from what you're actually spending. But someone kind of did that for me the other day in their head when they said, look, well, for me, cash is kind of like free money, right? I don't know if you call that, try girl math or whatever you want to call it.
That's girl math. We're not going to get into girl math. We went into that before in terms of dealing with that.
It's already out of my right.
Yeah, I'm not going down that road. So, the whole idea here is, look, retailers, if you're going into a store, go with a list. Don't use a cart because let's face it, carts look like small SUVs at this point because the whole idea is it's trying to trick you into thinking that the cart's not full. You can put more stuff in it type of thing. So what we really talk about is wants versus needs, right? Looking at an item, especially as we start getting to more expensive, bigger ticket items, something that's going to cost maybe, several $100s or $1,000 type of thing. And do I need it or do I just want it?
Mm-hmm.
And really this is one of those conversations that everybody needs to have. And there is this, I need to be setting what Craig and I call a cooling off period, taking a step back and saying, gee, all right, I'm just going to take an hour, take 2 hours, take a day, take a couple of days. And if I come back and I have the same yearning for it, okay, then I'll buy it. But a lot of times it'll be like, well, I didn't really need this thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, sometimes I need shoes, but do I need 10 pairs of shoes, right? Or I need another jacket, but do I need 10 jackets? So a lot of times, like I said, you kind of cross over, and it's very easy for some people to kind of push, especially if you want to, the wants into the needs category. And so that's where I think sometimes it gets a little bit fuzzy.
Right. And so then the question is, it's that time of the year, resolutions. Did you make a savings goal for this year? Is there something that you have that you're trying to save for, that you're trying to achieve this year? When we talk about goals, savings goals can be all sorts of different things, right? Maybe you wanted to start your own business. Maybe it was, I'm saving up for a down deposit on a new home. Maybe I'm trying to pay off debt. Maybe I'm trying to buy a new transportation, buy a new car. Maybe I'm trying to get the kid through college, save for education expenses, or maybe you're saving for your own retirement. Again, whatever the goal is that you're trying to save for, there are steps, there are measures, there are things you need to do, but you need to have this goal, this vision in place. What are you trying to achieve? because it's one of the ways that you're going to stay on track to try to get there. And again, we try to have a little fun with everybody. We're local. We grew up here, so we can be wicked smart when we talk about goal setting. And anytime we're dealing with goals, they need to be smart based, right? They need to be very, very specific. This is why, Craig, we get tripped up with resolutions every year, because we tend to leave them very open-ended.
Yeah, every time you get to this slide, I think I shouldn't be drinking my coffee. I should be drinking a Sam Adams because it's wicked smart.
Wicked smart, yes, right. It's got to be measurable, right? I've got to be able to track it. It's got to be attainable. I have to be able to achieve it at the time period. That's what time-based is, but the one that's most important is the R, the relevant. Listen, whatever the goal is, it can't be just, hey, I'm doing this because everybody else is doing it, or because something online said I should have this as a goal, because it's not going to be relevant for you. It's got to mean something to you, because it's the only way you're ever going to stick with it. It's the only way you're going to stick through the ups and the downs and the swings, and when stuff doesn't go right, get yourself back up off the mat and say, well, wait, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah,
a little hiccup. Go ahead, Craig.
Everybody's ever dieted, but you're on a diet and then all of a sudden you're sneaking Oreos at 2 a.m, right?
Yeah, having a cheat day, that type of thing.
So it's not going to be a straight line. Yeah.
in terms of going through it. So, 5 steps to save more money, right? So 1, you got to track your expenses. Don't care how you do it. We used to talk to people way, way long time ago, and I'm talking 20 years now, about writing stuff down. Nobody writes down anything anymore. God bless you all in the school, so you at least understand the concept of writing stuff down. But just try to do it for a week. Try to write down every time you spend a dime during a week. Is that tactile response again? Because what it does, it connects us to the fact that, wait, I'm spending how much on a latte? I'm spending how much on this cup of coffee or this water or this thing? And did I realize that if I've done this every single day? So try to track it. There are apps out there and stuff, but a lot of times the apps, they're just like plastic. They disconnect us. Buckets for saving. We'll talk about the buckets in the next slide, but ways of putting the money aside in different places. Craig and I always talk about, because when we're talking about cash flow and the spending, is don't get yourself caught up in the small stuff. Don't worry about the nickels and dimes. Find that, line item that you can just do without. God bless them. We make fun of streaming services nowadays because everybody has like 4 or 5 of them. Are you really watching all 4 or 5? Or did you just get it because like, hey, there was one show I wanted to watch and now I don't watch it anymore? Excuse me, or it ended. Maybe you can do without that streaming service, because that's a monthly cost, things like that.
Yeah, this is the other thing I think too, look at the other things like your auto insurance. When's the last time you repriced it? Can you get the same benefit for less dollars? And a lot of times we just don't, it's like it's automatic, so we don't think about it.
And then we talked about treat yourself like a bill, set smaller goals, right? So one of the adages with goal setting is I have a big goal. I've got a vision I'm trying to get to, but I need to have smaller goals along the way. I'm sure all of you deal with that with students every single day. You're doing the same thing, so you understand that. You need to be doing it for yourself and putting it in place when we're getting to, I'm trying to achieve something financially, whether that's I'm saving for something or I'm trying to pay down debt or whatever it might be in terms of dealing with that.
You know how you eat an elephant, right, Tom?
One bite at a time, sir. Absolutely. All right, so emergency fund, like one of the things we talk to everybody about, and we're going to talk about the buckets in a second, but it's about having an emergency fund. So here's the thing, in our world, our industry, we talk to people about having 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses set aside as an emergency account. We know COVID blew that up, right? So coming out of COVID, Craig and I have talked to everybody about having like 4 to 6 weeks of basic living expenses in this emergency fund, right? And when we talk about emergency fund, we talk about a separate account. This should not be your checking or your savings account. This should be someplace else. And when we say that, we talk about like a money market or a CD, something that the only way you can get to it is that the emergency happened. The car broke down, the fridge went out, whatever, the dog is sick, whatever the case may be. I've got this emergency fund I can dip into because I can't get at it with just my credit card or my debit card, right? I've got to actually, Greg, like call the bank or go to the bank to get the money out of this account.
Yeah, I need a shovel to get mine. It's buried in the backyard.
There you go. See, but you need the map too, because otherwise you'll never find it. And you needed it because it's an emergency. But just understand the concept there is because when we talk about that with savings in terms of putting stuff in different buckets, and that's our visual. We use buckets, you can bags or pools or whatever for money, but we talk about things in buckets. And bucket number one is that short-term bucket. That's the emergency fund. That account needs to get filled, whatever your target is, whether that's 4 weeks or 3 months or whatever, there's a number, you've got to fill it. I've got to get that bucket filled first. At the same time, I'm putting money in bucket number two, which usually for most people is I'm saving for something like upgrading my car, like a dream vacation, a family vacation type of thing, maybe down payment on a home. And then bucket number three is long-term, which usually for most of us is I'm saving for, kids' education or my own retirement.
And just
Now,
make where I
go
know
ahead.
we're at the top of the hour. I just want to let you know we're coming into the finish line. So
We
just,
are at the finish line for everybody. So we're going to be real quick through this. So just understand the idea here is I fill bucket number one. At the same time, I'm sprinkling money into buckets 2 and 3. Have a retirement account at work, so that's automatically a way to fill bucket number 3 in that case. Once bucket number 1 is full, I then pour that money into 2 and 3 to make sure they get more full. But you got to be thinking about this is how am I saving my money? What is it for? What is it going to be used for? And like Craig said, we're right at the top of the hour, so appreciate that heads up. Just for everybody, just know what we do is we make available, if you have any questions, you want to just, set up a time to go over your situation, your account, that QR code on the screen, if you're watching this as the recording, you can just pause it, shoot the QR code, it'll open up our calendar. That link is there as well. Craig, you got the link dropped into the chat box?
I do. Hang on 1 second. There we go. It's in the
He's
chat.
getting there. So that link, you can just copy and paste it. It'll open up our calendar. You can schedule a time. There's no cost, there's no obligation. You are here with us. We're happy to have a conversation, answer any questions that you might have about your situation. Because we know a lot of times people don't like to do it in a webinar, especially one that's on TV. So just know it's available, that you can do that. That QR code or the link Craig just dropped into the chat box, the one that's on the screen, that's fine. One favor, Craig, do you have this link?
Yep, it's in there now.
Awesome. So we do these webinars, these presentations, not only for organizations like Crossroads, community support groups, we do them for the state of Massachusetts as well. We do a lot with the state treasurer's office. We love to get feedback from the audience. We'd appreciate you taking just a quick minute for us. Just click on the link. It'll open up it'll take you 2 minutes. Just give us the feedback. Note there is a yes or no box in there that says, hey, if you'd like to schedule a time, if you do that, we'll reach out to you. Just know if you say no, we will never hear from us. We won't come back to you. We just want to have the conversation, but we're looking to get feedback. So we do appreciate that. Craig dropped the link in the chat box. Just copy and paste it. It'll open it up. Save the dates. So next month, we're going to do tackling debt. And because Heather asked for it, we're going to specifically talk about student loan debt and dealing with that and the different methods of dealing with debt. And then in March, we're going to do I need a will, which is really talking about all those legal documents that maybe everybody either should have or should consider having and the breakdown between them.
I like we're doing tackling debt the day after the Super Bowl. That'll be fun.
Yes. Well, fortunately, the Patriots are never going to be in it. So, at this point, but, I won't be that bad at Monday morning. I didn't even think of that. So you can visit the site. It's ariesfoundation.org. If you email, that's info@ariesfoundation.org. Or like I said, that QR code, open it up. It'll pop up our calendar and you can schedule a time. Heather, that's everything that we had. Are there any questions for us? Just about at the half-hour mark. We're just a little bit over, but we were close.
Yeah, we don't have anything in the chat box right now, but I'm happy to open it up to questions, even if you want to unmute yourself. I guess everybody's busy drinking their coffee this morning. Either that or we nailed it, one or the other.
All right. On that, I'm going to say, listen, everybody, have a great rest of the day. If you do think of anything, you can just, again, you can, follow up with us, shoot a note at the email address on the website. There is a contact us page as well, but set up a time. We're happy to answer questions. On that note, I'm gonna say thanks to everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you both. Have a good one.
Thanks, Heather. Take care.